So next up, we'll be taking a look at people and staffing. So understanding what level of recruitment and staff retention we can expect into 2021. So from our business confidence results, we can see that workforces will no doubt shrink in the new year, with the average leader expecting their workforce to have reduced by 1/4 in Feb 2021 compared to the level of staff that they had in Feb earlier this year. However, despite predicted closures and job losses, we can expect staff churn in the new year, with over half of business leaders planning to recruit new staff in 2021. But as expected, this will be at a lesser extent than previous years, given a reduction in these workforce sizes. So the majority there at 38%, indicating they will be recruiting, but less than they previously had. With that in mind, employee engagement is a key focus for the majority of leaders, with 95% focusing on engagement currently. Motivating staff and encouraging strong levels of communication across the business will be a key priority for many operators. We have seen how disrupted and turbulent working within the sector has been. It has therefore never been more important to offer support and motivate the workforce to ensure staff stick around. We also asked our sample what they prioritise in a bid to maintain employee engagement these past 6 months. And the key focus was increased frequency of communication, whilst also offering the likes of wellbeing, support and guidance as well. So on the topic of communication, we have seen that even during furlough, business leaders have been proactively engaging with staff. So 65% on a weekly basis there. Business leaders know the impact of low employment engagement and how detrimental this can be to business. In fact, actually 100% of leaders said that employee engagement is absolutely integral to driving customer engagement as well. And efforts this year in focusing and improving employee engagement are already paying off, with 92% of leaders stating that their employee engagement to be good now, which sat at only 80% prior to COVID earlier in the year. Data from our hospitality professionals panel, so this is where we survey all types of professionals working across the sector, also illustrates the sheer importance that frequent communication has on staff ratings. For those that were communicated with weekly and multiple times a week, we can see considerably higher levels of satisfaction scores than those left in the dark by their employer. Furloughed or not, frequent communication is a necessity for increasing employee engagement within hospitality. But bringing workers in and out of furlough is proving to actually be relatively unchallenging for the majority, with operators having had to adapt and become really agile and flexible in not only reviewing the workforce, but offering adequate training and support for those being brought back to work and off furlough. That's all from me, so back over to you, Peter, and the panel.
Thanks very much, Jess. I mean, it seems to me we've got two areas here which we'll talk about. Welcome back, Robin, Max, Carl, and also Sue, actually, I think from Fort is joining us as well for this section. Hi, Sue. As I said, I think there's probably two areas. One is that engagement with current staff and what's happened to staffing levels throughout this year, and then looking forward to what may be happening then. Carl, I mean, let me start with you briefly, because I think one of the things that came through, and we saw it there, certainly all through the CGA research during first lockdown and through the summer, is where teams have done, the companies have done well, is engaging with their teams. Have we seen any changing now? Are people keeping that up? Because dare I say, when people were bringing people off furlough, those people still seem to be there. They, as it were, weren't going off to find other jobs. I think you need your mic on.
I do indeed. Apologies. Yeah, I think in that respect, the furlough scheme has worked. People have stayed with hospitality, and I think there's just made it very, very clear, and it came out clearly in the research, that staff engagement point has been absolutely critical. just to keep people motivated, to keep people on board with that business, but also well-being. And I think the sector's done a remarkable job of ensuring that staff are engaged with and therefore are ready to return, also providing training during that period as well. So I think there's great credit to the sector, and actually the perceptions of a lot of employers is really positive, despite everything that we've been through. So yeah, I think in short, I think that engagement has been really good, and I think it has continued through that second lockdown.
Stu, let me bring you in there, because obviously Forth is on that front line. You're engaging with staff members on a daily basis. Have we seen any change in engagement about how people's practices and how teams, individual staff members are reacting to the new trading conditions?
Yeah, absolutely, Peter. We've seen across our customer base a 250% uplift of use of our and adoption of our Forth Engage app, which is a direct communication piece to the teams. And from that, we give them access to wage stream, which means that although they're on furlough, they can still draw down and draw from their wages, which is what's important to the team, to be able to keep them financially succinct, so they're not getting into, you know, the old debt circle. So absolutely, the engagement piece and the communication from their organisations is key for them, so they can bring them back in. And of course, the use of furlough and part-time furlough now brings them back in and keeps them within that organisation. Yeah.
Robin, in terms of your companies, this sort of connection with staff, are you seeing a growing bond, as it were, between management and staff, and what are staff wanting back from management across in obviously in very uncertain times?
Well, in all the 4 UK businesses I'm involved with, they've done an extraordinary job, and as Carl was saying, and they pull out the stops to actually maintain a regular dialogue, normally with the CEO doing a blog every week, and then also doing little meetings on a regular basis regionally, and town hall meetings where people were able to dial in and talk about their concerns and worries. I just like to just point out, I'm a little bit surprised only 22% of people said there's no problem bringing people back from furlough. And maybe a secondary question here, but I think there's actually a fundamental problem. 9 months of furlough has actually become, it has manifested itself in some people who don't want to come back to work, which is not they weren't being communicated well with, they were, but actually they're a little bit work shy coming back. And I'm going to be a little bit sort of provocative here. And our sector needs people to come back fully engaged. And I think they're engaged, but they're not rushing to come back to work. And I'm hearing, not just the business I'm involved with, other businesses where there are some no-shows, where we have a sort of a potential challenge in getting people back from furlough. I mean, not make a political statement here. I just think that it's gone on for a long time, and it has disengaged people from regular working habits.
I mean, it's a couple of things there. I think, in a sense, perhaps there are 20% who haven't had a problem. But why do you think that is? I mean, and what can you do about that? I mean, is there still this problem around, image of the sector, hours, whatever? Are people? Because let's face it, we are, if not now, we are going into a very tough jobs market, with unemployment going to rise into the new year without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, well, I have a direct comparison with an American company I'm involved with, where furlough just means you lose your job, which is really, really brutal. I mean, it is shocking that the American approach has been to give fairly large loans to the businesses, but none of it's actually trickled through to employees who've just been pushed out onto the unemployment benefit, which is nothing in the States. I think here I think the industry has a pretty good profile compared with 10 years ago, because we do spend more money on training people, and we pay a better rate of pay than we used to pay, which was long overdue, frankly. So I think the real issue is people commute long distances sometimes to work. They work on sociable hours. These are still issues which are endemic, and particularly in large cities, there's no easy answer to that. And they tend to be fairly inflexible in terms of working patterns. But the more enlightened employers have gone an awful long way to actually being more accommodating. So I don't think it's a sector any longer. I think it's people I just think the people who are experienced in giving hospitality don't feel very loved at the moment by that's me being slightly political about government support. And I think that we do need to encourage them to come back. And obviously what we do need is busy, vibrant businesses them to come back to, because you rely on tips. It is a major issue for people, because we are, remember, we cannot trade under the current regulations, fully tabled restaurants, and we are dealing with these very restricted social groups going into the restaurant. So this hits people in their pockets really, really hard. That is a fundamental problem, and the government don't understand how big gratuities is in our business as an issue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's an argument to say that I'm being political now, that they don't understand much about the hospitality industry at all, but what we've seen over the last few weeks. But Max, can I bring you in? Because one of the things which is quite clear, because obviously some companies have already gone to the wall, unfortunately. People have had to lay people off as well, not just on furlough. What are you seeing from the data you receive on the front line about staffing levels?
Yeah, so just on the furlough piece, so from the data that we have, which is around 700 customers that we've been supporting our customers in terms of getting those furlough exports generated so that they can apply for the furlough payments. We found over half of all employees in our system were going onto that furlough status during the first lockdown. So to Robin's point, there's a lot of unwinding there to do. Obviously, the furloughs come back in again now, and then when the furlough changed, that you could kind of partially furlough employees, we were finding that staff were then going back to work more, but they were working similar hours to before. So rather than kind of bringing lots of people back on kind of almost like a part-time kind of basis, people were working still the same sort of length of sort of schedule as they were working previously, just with fewer people. But I think what that's done, as Jess was saying, the 25% down she mentioned in February 2021, I think most employers expecting their workforce to shrunk by a quarter. We're actually already seeing that now in November, that overall the total size of the workforce across all of our customers is 25% down where it was a year ago. And of course that varies considerably by sector. If it's QSR, they're in a better shape than hotels. You know, pubs and restaurants kind of around about the same place. And we're seeing that shortage in two places. Front of house, as you'd expect, in waiting staff and servers, but also in back of house in junior sort of chef roles, not necessarily head chefs, but certainly those supporting roles around the kitchen. So yeah, hours are going to be down now. Obviously, scheduling is down significantly in line with sales. But as we enter this period of uncertainty and not knowing what trading is going to be like in the usual busy Christmas period, and we then start getting into January, there's going to be more challenge around recruitment, with operators sort of running on minimum levels. And then when demand does start to pick up again, sort of good chefs and those kind of key roles have always been in short demand in the past, as we know, and it's a sector with high turnover. There's going to be even greater challenges then in getting the right people in, and holding on to talent is very important right now. The other thing I just want to mention with all of this, it's I'm not making a political statement either, but the timing of the announcements and knowing about what's going to happen has made it very challenging. I think with the furlough process, just as a company, the time that we've had to sort of turn around and support our customers and customers being able to get those applications in, everything sort of felt quite rushed. We've known exactly kind of what the requirements are, and that's a challenge in itself.
Yeah. Robin, briefly, because in terms of looking into next year, there is an expectation, and we'll touch on this in the next section, really, about perhaps growth. It may well be coming back, but particularly on people. Are you finding? I mean, what's your attitude? What's your team's attitude to recruitment? Do they think if they need to start recruiting, they're going to find the people, or are they going to look in new ways to get the people they're going to need? Or do you think the reshaping of the market will mean that there are plenty of people to fill the gaps?
I think short term, there's plenty of people. I mean, we're with Rosa Ty, we'll open 10 units from Easter to Easter, which is pretty extraordinary, frankly. We're still growing, and we're finding it pretty easy to fill those positions. So that's a kind of if that's a data point, but they're basically London-based. The rest of the businesses, I think we're not going to see the same amount of capital investment in this space over the next 6 months anyway. So I suspect that it's just around maintaining the current business is going to be the order of the day. So I think the pain will be when the brakes are taken off and the investment starts coming back, which could be H2 next year, I reckon.
Yeah. Well, we're going to move on to that topic now. Carl, as we start to look at finance and investment, how important is that investment in people? How are people seeing that before we see the hard data?
I think investment in people is going to be really important. I think everyone's touched on it. I think there is an abundance of people about at the moment. So, you know, what Robin said in terms of roles recruiting, it's still going to be about getting those right people in, making sure that you induct them properly, and making sure that you engage them. So that we all talk about hospitality and the job it needs to do to build careers. And I think Robin said at the start that that's perhaps an increased challenge given what we've been through and how disproportionately affected the sector's been. So that selling job has become perhaps more difficult to build long-term careers, but we know it's still a fantastic sector to be in. And I think we just need to sell that as a sector. And I think Robin said, as the investment starts to roll out, as we start to see new site openings, we're going to need those people. The demand underlying is still there. We saw that through August with Eat Out to Help Out. So I still think long term, we will start to see some skill shortages, as Max talked about. There may be particular roles where we struggle as an industry to fill them. So I think keeping the right people and obviously recruiting the right people is going to be really, really important.
Thank you all. Well, look, we'll get you back shortly after Jess is taking us through the broader view of the issues around funding and investment. Thank you all for the minute, and we'll talk very soon.